Hey everyone, welcome to Cursed. And before we get started, a couple things. This is the second part to the interview and conversation I had with Josie Hellebore. Her social media handle changed since this was recorded, I think, in December. So I took any of those references out. But to find her, you can find her on Instagram at Josie Hellebore Official, and I'll link her other stuff down in the show notes. And check out Cursed Instagram, because when I post, I'll tag her and stuff. But real quick, I have some exciting things to share. If you didn't know, so my other podcast, Hex Files, is currently doing weekly clips on and little episodes on Witch With Me TV. That is on Instagram at witch.with.me.tv. There's a lot of other great pagan and witchcraft creators, authors. There's a lot of good people on there with a lot of good content. So go check that out. Hex Files, they drop on Sundays, and we've had a lot of fun making them. And yeah, so if you want more paranormal goodness, you can go there. As far as the upcoming episodes of Cursed, got a lot of interviews scheduled, some really cool people featured. I'm going to be guesting on some others, but I'll put more info on that coming up. However, I did want to say that next episode, so not this week, but the week after, I got to talk to, if you listen to the show, you're probably already familiar with it, but if you're not, there's a little, and I use the term little jokingly, there's a podcast called Old Gods of Appalachia, and I sat down and talked to Cam Collins she's the co-creator, she writes for it, and she's a practicing witch. And I found out a Hecatean. So we talk about the show, her practice, Appalachia, a little bit on Hecate, of course, because that's how it always goes. But yeah, I'm excited for that to come out. And not only that, it's going to be a whole Old Gods of Appalachia week, because that Tuesday before, the same week before this one comes out, that Tuesday, Cam and Steve, both the creators, you probably know Steve's voice. He's the narrator of Old Gods. And they're both going to be on Hex Files, and we're going to get more in depth into the show. We're going to talk about like the monsters, inspirations, some lore and stuff that inspired them, and some history on it. So they're really cool people. If you don't already follow them, and if you don't already listen, check them out. But that will be coming up soon. I guess that's all the updates. And yeah, so enjoy the second part of the interview with Josie. This is Cursed, and this is part 2 with Josie Hellebore, and we're talking about Satan. We're talking about homesteading. No, I'm kidding. But
well, we can if you want to, but you know.
Yes, the devil's in the details. So if you need to know how to preserve berries and jams, but we wanted to get more into, like, I guess your personal, because I think, I don't know, we described the devil as we know it, and the different paths. But again, we're not here to teach you about the different satanic paths. You're gonna have to figure that shit out.
But you know, one thing I will say, there is a podcast that I like to listen to, and it's called Hail Satan Podcast, and it's put on by Satanic Delco, and they're also members of the Satanic Temple. They did a really cool 2-part special on the Church of Satan. So if you really want to learn about it, I mean, it was very in depth, and they did a lot of research for it. And actually, it's where I learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know. I thought I knew a lot about it. Like I learned that Anton LaVey totally plagiarized the Satanic Bible, which I didn't know that. He plagiarized it from another book, and the book that he plagiarized it from was like anti-Semitic as all get out. And so it's like, okay, well, yeah, like I totally get where all these misogynistic and bigoted, you know, undertones for the Satanic Bible come into play. But if you are interested in learning about the Church of Satan, they do a really good pictorial of what that is.
Well, yeah, if you want to send me the links for those, or in a text, you can send me the name, and I'll try to link those. Can you link a podcast in a podcast? I think you can.
That would be cool.
Because, like, I definitely want to check those out too. And it sounds like because like I said, cursed isn't really ever been the one that's going to go 100% in depth. Like if you can Google it, you can Google it, and you can find resources. We'll certainly give them to you. But I had you on because I wanted your viewpoints as well, and
Sure.
like what it's like as somebody who practices. So that's what I said is like we'll talk about Satan, but we're not going to give you like this is where it started and this is like the books that are mandatory.
Yeah.
Like you can figure that out.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that you plagiarized it.
Yeah. A big part of it was plagiarized. Oh, I think
Well, I
let
mean,
me
if
see.
you're going to call something a Bible, I guess you have to kind of plagiarize and steal.
Well, he apparently admitted it, but it wasn't until years later that he admitted that it was almost entirely, plagiarized. I think that the best thing that Anton LaVey did was bring a good aesthetic to the table, because I actually love seeing the footage from the original Church of Satan in San Francisco in the 60s.
Yeah.
Those grainy videos, and there's like girls that it's like the 666 and like red fake blood on their chests and stuff, and there's like skulls everywhere, and he's got that weird costume with the horns. Like the aesthetic's great. Like I love
Yeah,
it.
you can't argue that. I mean,
But everything else, it's like, oh no. Um, there's actually like a lot of rules involved there. There's um, rules of the earth, like 11 rules of the earth. There's a lot, just like a lot of stuff. And like, I don't really like rules. Like I didn't get away from, a dogma that I was raised in that was based on a lot of rules and guilt and shame, just to get into something else that was also based in rules and guilt and shame or whatever. No, I can't really say that the Church of Satan is based in guilt and shame. That's not accurate. There are rules and stuff. It's more like a hedonism. So like, all about seeking like pleasure and indulgence. And then whereas like the Satanic Temple is more like altruism and humanitarianism, like doing for others and advocating for marginalized people and things like that. The two are completely
yes.
different.
So,
And for me, oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, like when we talked in the last episode,
Mm-hmm.
when we were talking about like the contradictions, does that have anything to do with like the rules, like the hedonism versus like, was that what you meant when you said there was a contradiction in some of that, or did I misread?
Well, I mean, yes. Yeah, well, yeah, there is some contradiction there. Well, and a lot of it too is, talking about like being, this indulgent person and being sexually free and stuff, but then you'll find like the misogynistic undertones there, whereas, you'll still see that Christianized belief where the woman should be subservient to the man on some level, right? Like the woman is supposed to is second rate to the man. And it's like, well, how does that fit and how is that congruent if it's all about pleasure? So it's all about seeking pleasure and stuff. I mean, you think like, sexually you can sleep with whoever you want and feel like guilt free about it, but not really if
Oh,
you're,
you just meant for the men. Okay.
well, I mean,
Well, I mean, like when you talk about that idea of like,
well,
um,
I think for the women too, like if you're gonna if you're a woman and you're gonna like talk, crap about like Christianity and like those kind of like, obeying the man kind of crap, but then you're gonna adhere to a satanic religion that also embodies those same values, I mean, then you're being hypocritical too,
well,
not
that's
just
what
the
I meant.
man.
Yeah, that's what I meant by the idea that it's like, well, you can just do and have sex with whatever you want. If you're a man, you can do that if you're a woman too, but you're going to get slut shamed a little bit and you're still going to have to follow these rules, but you're free. Like you're still
Right.
you're ignoring the whole premise of, being free and kind of doing what you want when you put some rules in there that, have that misogynistic lean and that patriarchal like influence. You're, like you said, you're being hypocritical about it. So, and that
Yeah.
was my joke about like, well, yeah, it's 100% wide open if you're a guy, 99% if you're a woman. It's still missing the point. But yeah, you can't take somebody like Lilith and the ties to Lucifer and the devil and Satan and say these are what they bring to you. It's do what you want and all this, and then you can't slut shame Lilith like by calling her a
Right.
whore and things like
Right.
that. um
Yeah.
and
And that's what I tend to see. And I hate reading that kind of crap. I'm like, it's like it doesn't matter how great like the book is and like how much information is in there about the history of the adversary and the history of, Lilith and the demons and like the legions of demons and all of that stuff. Like, as much as I want to learn about it, like that kind of language and verbiage just really just turns me off. I'm just like, what, just close my mind to the whole thing. That's kind of where I've taken as long as I had trying to read the Luciferian witchcraft book. Like, I still will thumb through it, but well, first of all, the book's like 500 pages long, almost like 485 or something, but it's not well edited either. So for someone like myself, like I'm very good with words, and writing comes very naturally to me. So when I'm reading stuff like that, I'm just like, why is there not an editor fixing this for you? Like, I don't even blame the author so much, just because maybe you're the type of person that just types it out as it flows and there's some mistakes in there, but you are paying an editor to clean it up for
So
you.
you're like, I probably
like, why isn't that person doing their job?
I probably did fuck up without putting a comma here, but they'll fix it, right? That's what they're there for.
Right. I mean, that's what you're depending on them for, right? Yeah.
Well, I had some of the problems with flipping through some of that, and I don't know if it's specifically that one book I mentioned in the first hour, but there, like, the idea that, I don't know, I don't like the whole, when you talk about Hecate as this idea, because there's some that view her as like a queen of hell, um, and not even like the Persephone idea, like a literal like queen of the satanic hell, with demons and all that shit. Like, I get that, but then there's also they also, when they talk about her that way, there's also like, I don't know. To me, when I read stuff like that, and I can't say it's out of that book, there were, I've read so much stuff about Hecate over the years, but when you start looking at her from that angle, and then you talk about Lucifer being this king, there are those undertones of like, well, she's second in command, and I hate that idea where it's like,
yeah,
why are we putting this fucking like king and queen bullshit idea that like it doesn't apply to the deities, in it's like, you can call him king of hell, you can call her queen of hell, you can call him whatever, but why would either one of them be second to the other? Like, I'm sure there's connections and all this and that, but I think it's that idea of like, I don't know, maybe in paganism, I'll probably get some hate for this, but that idea of paganism where it's like, there has to be a male and a female, and they have to like procreate and blah blah blah, and they have to do this. Like,
right.
I'm over that shit. Like, that's boring.
Right.
And I know the Holly King and all this stuff this time of year, like, that's great for stories and stuff, but like, I don't need that. I don't need that structure, and I don't need that like filter on my practices about, well, there's a lord and lady and king, because it's just, it's fucking boring, right? I mean.
Yeah, it is boring. That's actually, when I first started like my path like years ago, when I was probably 14, 15, and it was around the time when The Craft came out. Love that movie. Love that movie. And I think they kind of did some good by not actually trying to incorporate a practiced path. Like, I like that, Manal was like not real, I think was probably the best course they could have gone. Because I don't know that, I think when you try to do actual, spiritual paths or religions or beliefs and stuff like that, and you try to do it on TV. I mean, look at what American Horror Story did for voodoo. I mean, it's like, no, guys, just don't even try. Like, you know what I mean? Like, equating Papa Legba to Baron Samedi, it's like, don't even. It just don't. Just make some shit up and then just do it that way.
Right. Just
that means
make it
just make some shit up, which is what The Craft did, and I think they did good by doing that. But for me, it was like, okay, I was kind of at the time disappointed when I found out that wasn't a real deity, and that wasn't a real witch path, that I could follow.
uh-huh.
And back then, that's like before the internet. And so basically we would just like pass around, dog-eared books and stuff, and like a lot of Scott Cunningham stuff going around. Everything was Wiccan. I don't even know. I'm sure there was other stuff being put out, but there was nothing that I could get my little teenage hands on
Right.
at that time that wasn't Wiccan. And from the go, like, I loved learning about, the way that they would use like the herbs and, make incense blends and, manipulating energies by using the plant spirits and things like that. Loved all of that. could never get down with the Lord and Lady concept. Just couldn't do it. Like it was just, and I remember just kind of being disappointed, like reading it. I mean, like, well, is this like all that there is? You know, which it's obviously there's not. There's tons out there, but back then, new witches kind of have a hand up, because now, like with internet, and yeah, Google has got some of its bad qualities as well, but also a whole new world has been opened up to people that want to learn about the craft or any kind of spirituality, because it's just there's so many ways to research,
I would
and
argue that,
connect.
you find those people that like they read one book and like that's their dogma now.
Hmm.
But I would argue that like as much misinformation as there is, like there's no excuse to fall for it, because like
Right.
you can do a quick search, like, is what I just read bullshit? Yes, it was. Okay, done. On to the next
Right.
page. No
Right.
excuse.
Exactly.
Yeah, but back then when it's like,
Cross-reference. Yeah, back
yeah,
then it was, you
exactly.
couldn't really do that.
Yeah, by then you had to find the other books that might, present a different argument or something else. But and that's not to say that there's anything wrong if that's like your thing, if that's your
Right. If that's your,
idea.
if that's your thing. It just didn't resonate with me. And I don't know about you, but I've always kind of been one of those people that, like, I kind of was jealous of the people that do find it, that they find what they're looking for that first time around. Like my friends that were raised Christian, and they're just Christian, and that's what they believe, and they love it, and they're passionate about it. And like, not that I wish that I was Christian, but wish that it was just that easy for me, because it never has been. Even like learning about witchcraft, my first what I was exposed to, what I learned about Wiccan, like, again, doesn't resonate with me. So at this time, I'm like thinking, like, is
Right.
there something wrong with me?
Well,
Like,
okay, I think for somebody who like is always on that quest and that like looking for that stuff, like you're just fucked. Like
yeah,
you're never
right,
gonna be satisfied, because like I was like, oh my God, agnostic never fit. Like, I mean, I always wanted to know more, but I felt like I couldn't just go on full atheism. And then I was like, wait a minute, pagan, like this is it, this is it. And then it was like,
right. This is it.
wait,
And
no, it's not, but it's close. So,
we're getting there. We're getting warmer.
um, but like I said, that whole like Lord and Lady just feels all too like Renaissance festival to me.
To me too. Exactly. That's exactly the vibe that I got from it. And I was like, man, like that's just not it for me.
So I don't need to be like, well, I like Hecate, so she's married to the devil now, and they will hell, and their daughter is this, and no, like just fucking work with them. Like, why? I don't know why there has to be this fucking idea that there's like, I don't know, a king and a
I
queen. Like,
guess it's human nature for us to try
okay,
to put things in terms that make more sense, that we're more used to, which is why I think you see like a lot of so we were talking about this like in the last hour, like trying to make one deity into another. While they might hold similarities and traits, they're not the same. But that synchronization is something you'll see in all kinds of cultures, and it's really offensive. It's really whitewashing, right? Like I remember, like I was saying the last hour, like when I was studying about different ATRs and stuff, African tradition religions and what those were, and I would read some books that were put out by white authors in the witch community, more of a pagan centric community, and they would call like Orisha or Loa, referred to them as African goddess of this. Well, it's not a goddess, and it's not. I
it's
remember one book called one book referred to I believe it was Yamaya, and they called her it was Oshun, and they referred to Oshun as the African version of Aphrodite. And I'm like, whoa,
oh
no, like you can't, no. But I feel like as humans, we have this need to want to break it down into terms that make sense for us, rather than just accepting it for what it is. And so
yeah,
maybe that's why, the like the wanting to break it down to where it's like a family dynamic,
well,
like
I
the
can
king and
understand,
the queen and the
right, I can understand why, or like when you take paganism, if you like, you can't really nail it down to, but if you go back and you say, well, they were doing this because they needed deities for certain things, like, well, this one controls the weather and this one does crops, and you see the earth as kind of a I guess a life cycle, and then their idea is, well, life is procreation for them, which, I mean, that's not the purpose of life, but that's certainly an aspect. So I think maybe you get the male female procreation, like birth. That's what the earth is doing, it's dying and then being born, and that's why you get these
right.
dynamics of like male, female, and Sabbath this and Sabbath that. Like, and
Yeah.
at some point, like that just doesn't do it for me. And I'm like, okay, but what about all this other cool shit out here? Except,
Yeah.
and so I think maybe that's probably tied to it too, is like harvest and all the different Sabbaths and tying them into um, fertility and rebirth and stuff. So for them, and that's not to say that when you talk about having like any other kind of sexual orientation, those existed as far back as humanity has existed. But
Absolutely.
that idea of like, well, rebirth and birth and all that stuff, like, that's, you get that heterosexual idea for the,
Mm-hmm.
so I think
Yeah,
that's
that
kind of where
concept
it
of
comes
it.
from.
Yeah.
But like to stick with that in this day and age as being like, and that again bleeds over from our conversation about the masculine and feminine idea. And I think those are too narrow-minded even for um, deity and stuff. Like, there's different energies and there's different things. But yeah, as far as like, I don't know, as far as questioning and stuff, like I never did do a Wicca thing, because although I read about it and looked into it, like I just knew it wasn't for me. And that's probably like my kickback from Christianity, was it felt too like um structured, to, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah. It did feel too structured. That's a good way to describe it, because I remember back then in the books that I was reading, it was saying that, you had to be initiated. Like you couldn't just practice. That's not really something that you see in books today, even like Wiccan books and stuff. Like it's more open and an open practice. But like back then it was like, you can't be a witch until you're initiated by another witch.
yeah, that's
And I'm
true.
like, wait, I was living in rural Ohio at the time. And
How
I
many
mean,
witches
like,
are there?
like, where the fuck, how am I going to get initiated? But I didn't need to. Like, I had everything inside me the whole time, right? Like,
Right.
I had the
Well,
ability inside the whole time.
now you can get initiated online and become a Reiki master all in one day. But no,
Yeah.
I think, and that's nothing against, if that's your tradition and that's what you want to do, that's great. But yeah, I think, that idea has like gone out the window. And, um, I think maybe the only initiation you need to be with a witch is to find yourself, and, the devil was in you the whole time. But yeah, for Satanism to like have rules, and, I don't know enough about the whole point of like the reason he decided, oh, I'm going to make these rules and shit for, you know, to, I don't know. Now that he stole it, I don't even know what the original source was, the source material was for these rules. But
I think that the rules of the earth were concepts that Anton LaVey did create on his own, but
okay,
there were other things within the book itself that were not created by him. And the rules, I mean, there's a lot. So there is the 11 satanic rules of the earth. There's 9 satanic sins, and then there are 9 satanic statements. And I mean, then it's just all like really crazy stuff. Some of it is like you can tell. So Anton was really about, shock value, right?
yeah,
Like, and that's, one of the big things about him. And so I think that a lot of that is translated over into those kind of works he created. And I think a lot of it too was just trying to like buck against the status quo. You know what I mean? Like
I think
it
it's
was
like
the 60s. It was the 60s. We're coming out of the 50s, which was an incredibly conservative, decade. Coming
yeah,
into the 60s, and things are starting to get, in San Francisco at that. So you get like kind of the free love movement happening, and so like a lot of the stuff that he wrote in terms of those are just like uh, so like this one, number 5 of the 9 satanic statements. Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. So it's just like we're going to take one of the 10 commandments or one of the things that Jesus said, and we're just going to flip it around and do the opposite of that because we're satanic. You know what I mean?
right.
So like, and he does advocate for like a lot of violence in some of them, but like I don't think those were the things that were plagiarized. It was some of the other meatier aspects of the book itself, like the written paragraphs and stuff, rather than
Like
like the rules and statements.
honor thy father and mother, fucking kill them and bathe in their blood. But rule number 2.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, totally.
right. It's just like how obscene can we be in like
Exactly.
perverting
Exactly. Shock appeal.
yeah, the other stuff. So, but yeah, like when you when you talk about the left-hand path, because we didn't really get
Hmm.
into that
Yeah.
last one, tell us what, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, tell us
What
what
does that
your,
like mean to me? Like
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that.
I
So,
don't want you to be like, describe what the left-hand path is and why
right, right. Well,
there's
I'll
so
just kind of give you like a little rundown of like, so what, my path has looked like kind of like over the years. So like I was saying, like, my first introduction, of course, was like Wiccan, like many witches, right? Not really feeling like that resonated with me.
Mhm.
And then for many years, I practiced without utilizing any deities because I really just didn't know. Like I really just didn't know where I stood in all of it. And like you, I was kind of in this place where like, well, am I agnostic? Do I not believe in anything? Do I, so I was not practicing with deities for a very long time. And it wasn't until I really started to work with Hecate that I can say that I had an actual deity that I resonated with and started to build a relationship with. You know, now
Mhm.
I'm sure, like, because a lot of the witchcraft that I was doing in my 20s, and I've shared about this in a lot of in some blogs and some of my posts and stuff. I am an addict in recovery, and so a lot of the stuff that I was doing in my 20s, I was high out of my freaking mind. So like, who knows what entities or whatever I was conjuring up and or working with. I have no idea. I wasn't trying to, but that's not to say that I wasn't, right?
Right.
But as far as, and I think that that's another thing too, is that I was so lost in that aspect of myself. I really wasn't in a place to develop a relationship with a deity, or would any deity want to, at that time. But so what Hecate did for me was she kind of came into my life in the very early stages of my recovery process, probably about 9 months or so into being, clean and stuff. And like I was going to meetings and everything, I'm like working like this 12-step program where they encourage you to have a higher power. And so like I'm exploring like what that means for me. And a lot of the 12 steps, they say God and him, and like those are the pronouns that they use to describe God, right? And
Yeah.
I remember just having so many resentments against that early on. Like, why does it got to be a him? Why does it got to be God? And like not really knowing why I was so upset about it, but just being really, really upset about it. And then I started to kind of explore, and I found Hecate. And then I found out that, she was kind of known for working with, like you said, marginalized people, or people finding them at their most broken state, which I was not at my broken state when I found her. I had just come out of it though. And I think I had come out of it to a point where I was ready to then begin a relationship.
Yeah.
Um, and so, although I had practiced the craft for a very long time, I'd say like at that point, my craft got a whole new level, because I was clear headed and able to really internalize the things that I was doing and what I was learning, and I was open enough to be cognizant of the deity that I was building a relationship with, and that's kind of when things started to, evolve for me. And I've loved, Cindy Brandon has touched on this before, um, getting to the left hand path stuff about toxic positivity.
Oh,
Toxic positivity, and I love the concept of it because you see that a lot in the witch community. You've got all these people that say only love and light. They're light workers. That's how they identify, which that's fine.
yeah.
But I have to tell it, in my opinion and in my experiences and what I've learned, is that whenever you're doing the toxic positivity, all love, light, all the time shit, you're robbing yourself from your natural aspects of yourself, right? Because we all have our darker aspects. We all get upset sometimes. We all get angry sometimes, and that's okay. Those are natural feelings. But you're also really limiting your magic. So if you're only, open to doing this light, love, positive stuff, but you're shutting down any kind of the opposite spectrum, you're there's not balance in your magic. There's not balance in your magic. And I feel like, although I do say, identify as left hand path, I'm also, not exclusively doing left hand path. Like I'm not just exclusively doing things that work with the darker aspects. And that doesn't mean, left hand path doesn't just mean to me, like doing curses and hexes and stuff. To be honest, like I rarely have had to do those. Like I don't go around doing that kind of shit. Doesn't mean I'm not still practicing left hand path stuff. Like I might be incorporating some darker energies and entities. I might be, animism, like practicing with, I use like a lot of bones and stuff. I kind of just like delve into the darker aspects, using things not necessarily doing a lot of blood magic, but like doing things to represent blood magic, you got to be really careful with blood magic. So if you want to experiment with blood magic, all I can say is just be really, really careful, because you're really binding yourself or whoever's blood to whatever the fuck you're doing. And if you're new, maybe start out by using like pomegranate juice as a good substitute, cherries, beets. These are all things that you can use if you want to do a ritual and you want to represent blood in that ritual, to where you're not actually using your blood or someone else's and binding yourself to who the fuck knows what.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, like, use somebody else's. Be safe. Use somebody else's.
Use somebody else's. Oh gosh. So
but
you know,
I've
and
talked about that before is like, you know, blood magic. You shouldn't be scared of it, but you should be very like aware of when and why.
What you're doing. Yeah, what you're doing. And the same thing is if you want to learn about like demonology, you're working with, you know, lower level entities and lower level spirits, like, I'm not saying don't do it. Like, I'm not saying if you want to like summon a demon or whatever, like, go ahead, but just know, like, do your research on who you're summoning. And like, if you want to, like, so for instance, the, you know, the greater and lesser keys of Solomon has the 72 demons, right? You can read through the 72 demons, and there's some that you can read their little description about them, and you're like, okay, this is probably one that's going to be more favorable to work with. You'll read about somebody else, and they're like, you know, they deceive the magician. They very rarely pay their, you know, you're not going to want to summon that demon to do a favor for you, right? Like, this demon is known for tricking the magician.
Right.
You
and
know?
it straight up says, like, do not summon this demon. It will lie to you.
Right. Yeah.
It'll
like,
fuck
this,
you up.
you're
It's
not
like,
probably going to.
is
Yeah.
this, oh my God, is this my demon? Is this the one
Yes.
for me?
Yes. Whereas there's the other ones that tell you like, oh yeah, they're, you know, very giving, and they're free giving with familiars. They're known to give familiars, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, go that route.
Right.
But before you jump in and do it, learn about it and learn about the things that entity likes as far as offerings and stuff. Like, just be smart.
Yeah, I was talking about how to find your familiar, and you could ask like your deity, ask the devil, and ask the demons. Make sure you're asking the right ones. But
yeah,
see, you don't have to ask a specific deity. You can ask some demons, like make some friends.
Make some friends. But again, do your research first.
Yeah, or don't. I mean, we're not here to tell you how you live your life, but
right,
it would be in your best interest to read about said, like, the
that would be my suggestion. You know what I mean? Like, or, you know, you might end up with like a lot of bad shit going on in your house full of horseflies, and you don't know how to get rid of them. Something weird like that.
Those are awful. You don't.
I have friends that's happened to, you know. And that is tied with like there's specific demons that like the horsefly is tied to. So it's a good idea if that happens, and maybe you should look into what that specific demon takes as payment or an offering. And, you know, to be honest, my experience, they're pretty easy to please. There's some basic ground rules, you know, things that they can't get themselves. Right. So things of the earth usually, like, and when I say things of the earth, I don't mean just like rocks and stuff. I mean, crystals are cool. I've gifted those before, but worldly objects of man's world, right? Like our realm.
Well, that's like what I mentioned with like familiars. It's like you can gift them things, but like a lot of what I gift my familiar in return is like things like you know, drinking coffee like while she's like present, and it's things like that. Like, why would they want to, like, what do they get out of this? It's like things like that.
Right. Exactly. It's got to be a give and take. Another thing too, another rule of thumb is give them something you want to keep for yourself. Like, don't give them something that you don't give a fuck about, that you don't give a shit about. Like, something that you want, like, I really love this chocolates that my coworker gave me for my Secret Santa. Instead of keeping them for myself, you know, maybe I'll give them to old such and such demon. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, somebody gave me this, like, and I hate this kind, and I'm just gonna give it to them because I want to get rid of it.
I don't like it anyway. They can have it. Yeah, not good.
Yeah, I remember that Ava did something for a friend, and he was like, well, what can I do to repay you? And she's like, well, whiskey. And he bought like this tiny little thing of whiskey, and her joke was like, man, you really fucking like don't want to pay up, like, but
right.
no, it was still fine, but like it's one of those things too, where, I mean, he didn't buy it, he got a good one. It was just, a smaller version of it. And it's like, well, I mean, how much, but how giving and thankful are you? Yeah,
Right.
don't give them top shelf. Don't give them bottom shelf. But
Yeah. Make a trip to the store, to the liquor store, or to the, whatever, the florist, because flowers is one that I like to give too, because flowers is something of this world that, like, demons that are in other realms, they don't get to enjoy flowers.
yeah,
Doesn't mean they
demons
don't like
don't
them.
yeah, demons don't get flowers, and that's sad.
It
But
is sad. So that's one of my offerings that I do like. I do like to give is flowers and stuff. And I don't just like take the flowers off of my, kitchen table vase that are kind of starting to wilt. I go to the store and I buy them some that I specifically pick out for them.
and part of it is like that bullshit, like you always hear this time of year. It's the thought that counts. But like, put some work into it. Not like,
Put
oh
some
shit,
fucking effort into it.
yeah, like, oh, I've got, yeah, some leftovers. Like, no, make a meal and, like,
Yeah.
you know, give it to that. Like, it's the same thing as you would offer a deity. Like, I mean,
Or to
in
your
that,
ancestors, like if you work with your
right,
ancestors and, like, you cook a meal, like for like ancestor veneration, like they say, serve your ancestors first. So make them their plate first of the badass meal that you made on,
yeah,
Christmas or whatever,
yeah,
and let them eat first. Like that's that kind of thought process.
right. Yeah, how don't like it, treat it like a relationship. Like, you don't
Exactly.
give them like shitty shit things. Give them good things. Like, the
And
demons are like, what, we got so many fucking rocks. Like, oh, this is nice. This is, a Starbucks gift card and some flowers. I love it. Thank you. Tired of all these rocks.
uh, yeah, maybe get them one of those seasonal drinks from Starbucks, like the pumpkin spice latte or something, when it's
Yeah.
limited time only. They can't get all year long.
Yeah, especially, yeah, don't, settle, won't make them a cup of Folgers or something, But
Right.
so that's interesting to me because I think, when people think of the left hand path, they think cursing and blah, blah, blah. But like, that's not necessarily, all there is to it. So the fact that you
Right.
say you're a left hand pather, um, and then you say, I don't really ever curse anybody or do curses because don't need to.
I
Um,
don't need to,
but you could
you
if
know?
you had to. Um,
Yeah, of course.
and the
And
thing I never like the best way to curse somebody is to bless everyone around them. Like, just go quit
what?
the foreplay, like go direct, go straight to them.
Right.
Nothing's stopping
That's
you.
some more of that toxic positivity shit.
Exactly. But so what are some of like the besides giving demons flowers, which is adorable, but like what are other ways that you like could do the left hand path that's like, you know, that people just on the surface don't think to that involves the left hand path, if that makes sense.
Well, okay, so some things that that can be left hand path that people don't think about is one thing that I have done. I haven't done a lot of hexes or curses, but I have done some removals. Um, I actually made this incense blend called Hex X. Remember, I was telling you about my old brand was Queen's Hive Apothecary, and we did like ritual kits and stuff.
Hmm.
One of the ones that I created was Hex X, but it was only something I didn't sell it like as a kit. You could just buy anytime. You had to do a consultation. I would do a reading and determine it was in fact what you needed. Stuff like that, which is some pretty heavy work. Like if people don't realize how much protection and work you have to put on yourself, if you're going to be that spiritual worker or that witch or whatever that is willing to remove a curse from somebody, yeah, there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely something that people don't think about. They just think about the hex themselves, but removing it, you got to delve into the darkness for that too. Another thing is if you're going to partake in any kind of justice work, right?
Hmm.
Like it's like kind of like being a vigilante. There's a lot of times where the justice system fails us, and so as witches,
Which is
we
very,
have the ability to take matters into our own hands and see
right.
that justice is served on a different kind of justice on a
Because
different
like,
level.
if and that, I do a lot of work with that between my familiar and the familiar and the and Hecate. Like, I do a lot of justice work, and honestly, if you looked at it on the surface, it would look like a curse, but it's not.
Right,
It's a call to justice, and
right.
but it's also that kind of like, I mean, you get what you get, motherfucker. Like, you know, you have it coming, and there's a lot of things that might want to see you have it coming. I'm gonna let them handle
Hmm.
it. Um,
Right.
but no, I like that idea because, you know, when you work with Hecate and you work with Satan and you work with all these, like, you're gonna be on a left-hand path as far as, if you had to pick a side, as far as like witchcraft is
Right,
concerned, you're gonna have to
right.
do the dirty, darker things, and that requires a lot of protection and a lot of like networking, um, with demons and spirits and things like this.
And sometimes it's just doing the grosser, the dirtier kinds of spell work. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, we've all seen, because it's become more mainstream over the past, few years or whatever, but we've all seen that meme where it's the beef tongue and it's all sewn up with like the black thread and like the pins and stuff in it. And doing stuff like that, that you're not like, it's like the spell is like the shut the fuck up spell or whatever, the end gossip and slander spell. It's not a hex. You're actually, it's almost more like a return to sender. If anything, it's more like a shut it down spell.
Yeah,
But the type of spell that it is most definitely within the left hand path realm. Like, you know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I would have more questions about like, what do right hand path people do? Because I don't think I've ever really done anything that would be considered. I mean, I've done like the
Well,
little
I think that you probably do all the time, just not realizing it. Like, so
prop.
any of the more innocent kind of stuff that you do, I would kind of throw it in there, like, right, like,
Mhm.
I don't know,
Do a
like
lot of
basic.
I don't do a lot of like healing things, and I don't do um I've tried some prosperity stuff, but like I do have a knack for um the other shit. Like whether it's curses, whether it's justice, whether it's protection,
Yeah,
whether it's removal or binding and things like that. And I mean that's just like what I do. But
yeah.
and maybe you're probably listening to this and you're like, fuck, I'm doing that shit too. Like, yeah. And it's
Well, I
witchcraft.
think that we all have, yeah, I think that we all have our kind of like strong suits, our mediums that we're good at. Like, so like I really enjoy like the hex removal stuff. It does take a lot out of you. It's a lot of work. And like I said, it's something that, I never sold as just like a kit that you could buy through the shop. It was always, it was very, a lot of conversations went into play and a lot of divination was done to determine that that was the best course of action. Because you got a lot of people that think that they're hexed and they're cursed and that they're not. And then you've got people that are legitimately hexed and cursed. And if you're going to go in there and advocate for them, you better know where it's coming from,
True.
because you don't know. Like,
More than
so as this
likely,
person's paying me, if they're paying me to come remove this hex, well, the person that is hexing them might not be the person hexing them. They're paying somebody else who's a bad motherfucker to hex them. So then you're really going toe to toe with that person. You know
right.
what I mean?
I would
So
say
you
that
got to really be careful with that.
the majority of people that think they aren't. But there's also,
Right.
like, to me, that's
Right.
like the joy of part of it, because the more you think you might be, the more it's gonna work if there is one, and the more you're just gonna bring
Yeah.
on yourself. So that's fun too. I like doing that.
Yeah. Nine,
But
nine out of 10, 9 out of 10 times, it's more of like people causing conflict and strife in their own lives through their own actions and consequences of those actions.
yes, you
9 times out of
maybe,
10.
I'll take your money, but I'm gonna tell you the person hexing you is you. I'm gonna remove it, but
I
you're doing
actually
it
would
to
not.
yourself.
I actually wouldn't take their money. So let me just say, I wouldn't take their. But I would tell them, be like, look, here's. I did a divination, and this is what came about that reading. And you're not in fact cursed, but like maybe it's what you're surrounding yourself, people you're surrounding yourself with, and the energy that you're bringing. And a lot of times it would be like you're hanging out with a guy that's like, a known cheater, drug dealer guy, and then you're wondering like why you're having relationship problems with this individual. Well, I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, of course you're
Right.
having relationship problems with that. You're expecting honesty from a dishonest person.
Yeah, and sometimes you're missing signs and you're missing things that are like, well, no magic is going to make this work, because the only thing you can do to make it work is to leave. Um,
Right.
and so,
Right.
that's, you've self-cursed by keeping yourself there, and you have to remove yourself, and then things can get better. But yeah, those are the people that think like, well, why isn't my job getting better? It's like, well, are you actually trying to make your job better?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. What mundane things are you doing to
Or
back
like,
up the
I want a
magical?
new job. I hate my job. It's like, okay, where have you
Okay,
applied?
you
Well, I have never
right.
applied to anything, but I
Yeah,
want
it's like,
this
have you
other
updated
job.
your resume?
Well, no, I just want it handed
Yeah.
to me. Um,
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. No, I that is another kind of magic that I am good at. Those kind of stuff is road opening, and I am pretty good at prosperity stuff. Like, that's road opening is probably one of my favorites to do, because it can be so diverse. I mean, you can talk about road opening in terms of new opportunities, jobs, financial success, stuff like that, or it could be something completely different, you know, like educational opportunity. I don't know. I really like road openers. I think that they're really diverse. And, you know, you can do a road opener on a Thursday or new moon. So you got a lot of good opportunities. I mean, you can do one anytime. So like,
Yeah.
don't want anyone to think you can't, you can do whatever spell you want anytime you want.
Right.
There's just times that are more favorable than others,
Yeah.
you know?
And Satan loves you, and Satan is okay with whenever you want to do whatever. No, there's sometimes like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, if I'm doing a call to justice or a protection or something, like, I like the dark moon for my familiar and Hecate, but sometimes you
Mm.
can't wait. But if you can, I know there's gonna be that little bit of an edge. So yeah, there's energies afoot that will help you, but you don't have to be like, fuck, I need this done now, and it's not even a Tuesday in a like waxing moon. I can't do it. Like, do it. Like, if you have to act,
Yeah.
you have to do it.
I mean, you know, you can even work with the hands of the clock too. So, I mean, like, there's so many different ways that you can work. And that's actually like an old conjure um, practice. I learned that from Starcastus. That's another, you know, kind of folk magic that I like enjoy and learned a lot about was, you know, hoodoo or conjure. And Starcastus wrote a lot of books about it. I, I don't really work with it in that path anymore, although I have a lot of respect for it, and I love learning about it, and I love the methods and stuff because they're completely different from like the European kind of and the Wiccan witchcraft and stuff that I had learned. Like the herb correspondences are different, the
Mm-hmm.
spells are different, everything's totally different, and I love that about it. But hoodoo and conjure is very Christian centered. Like a lot of the rituals and spells and stuff are done utilizing the Bible. And so for me, as you can imagine, that just felt really contradictory and just out of place. So, but I love to learn about stuff. So I could still learn about it and, you know, have people that I know that are great practitioners within that, you know, within that path and know that the path isn't necessarily for me.
Well, you know, and to mention too, like the fact that you talk about like I'm trying to think of the book. I can't even think of the book, but I've talked about it before. I've mentioned it before. It it's similar to that idea of like the mountain magic or the granny magic, where there's a lot of use of the Bible in, you know,
Yes.
Southern conjure,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what was available, and it doesn't mean it's not effective, but I don't like to do it. And back to
Right.
the talking about Corey's book, and not to like, I'm not like giving it away because I'm not like, oh my God, Corey. But you know, there's a good point in there too, where it's like there's this stuff that you can look at and appreciate and learn about, but it might not be for you on a couple different
Yes.
terms. Like it might be appropriation, so you can't just take it. Just because
Yep.
you learn about it doesn't mean it's for you.
Yep.
But you know, so I appreciate these old like mountain southern charms and spells that no one here would call witchcraft. They'd be like, no,
Everyone and those practitioners won't call themselves witches either. Like
no,
so
no.
Starcassus is vehemently like she's a conjure woman. She's not a witch. You know?
They won't. Yeah, they might not even call it that. It's just like that's what grandma always did, and that ain't no
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
calling my
Yep.
grandma a witch. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Get out of this holler. But no, they're not like, but they're still doing magic. They're still doing that. And I know like people use the Psalms, because those are basically you know, spells. I have something that I have it and I did it and I fucking love that I did it, and it's so it's like I love it, but I don't know what to use them for yet. So I burned a Bible, right? And I've got the ash.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's
Ooh.
two different thoughts, like, oh, I would never do that, even if I don't believe in it. It's so blasphemous. Like you're just incurring all this stuff. And I'm like, fuck that. I don't give a shit. I'm going to burn it. I didn't buy it. It just came, the place I worked at, somebody brought it, like, you know, oh, your business is open. Here's a Bible. And I'm like, can I have that? And I burned it on Samhain, and I've got a whole jar of the ashes, and I don't know, I know they'll come in handy, but it's like, okay, well, how could you use them? You could use them in a blasphemous way. Like, because sometimes,
Yes.
you know, that's a left-hand path and a satanic idea, I think, is
Mm-hmm.
to use something like that, you know, an upside down cross, things like that, make it blasphemous for a purpose. And sometimes it's just about decor around the house. But
Yeah, you know, it sounds like it would be a really good if you've ever heard of like an unbaptism
yes,
ritual. Like that would be really cool to like anoint like the ash with the ashes like on the forehead of the individual, like with an upside
yeah,
down cross or
like a
something.
reverse like Ash Wednesday, but like upside down.
Hell yes.
Um,
Like where you're going with this.
but I like I mean, there's a bunch of lore about how to unbaptize yourself because I looked into it because, yeah, it's like, I fucking love this shit. And it's like saying
Yeah.
the prayer backwards is like a common one.
Well, Shiva Honey, if you're familiar with her,
No, but I wanted
she
you
is
to
a
talk
member of the Satanic Temple. She's got a book called The Devil's Tome, and she's got an unbaptism ritual in there. She actually sells a ritual kit on her website as well for that. They
well,
had like a group unbaptism.
I wanted to ask you about her because um, you said at one point you had recommended to check her out and all this and that. And
Yeah,
yeah, so I guess when we talk about resources and stuff, like she would be a good one um,
yeah.
from her viewpoint and stuff. So, I mean, I'm not saying like, hey, let's talk about her, but yeah, that's the name I was thinking of, and I forgot to.
No, I really like her, and she's also like a really cool person, like super approachable. I messaged her with some questions about, just I was feeling like very drawn to the Satanic Temple, and like I'm just to clarify, like I am not a member of my local chapter. You can become a member of the Satanic Temple by just signing up on their website. It's that easy, and then you're considered like a member. You can even purchase a card. Then you can be like a card carrying member,
Yeah, I'm a
and the card is like
card.
$20, and it supports their cause and stuff. And a lot of people do that that don't necessarily align themselves with that. They just want to support because they know it's a good cause.
Yeah.
But when I was first feeling drawn to the Satanic Temple, and my big hesitancy with completely aligning myself with it is the fact that they do state openly like not believing in magic and stuff like that. And like I said, in the last hour, like my experiences don't allow me to hold an atheistic belief.
Right.
My lived experiences are my lived experiences, and that's the best evidence that I have. And I know what I know, and I know what I've experienced, and I have experienced, entities and spirits and things of otherworldly. So I don't have this belief that science is the only end all be all. Like I believe in science, absolutely. So like, don't want to misspeak there or have that misinterpreted. I absolutely do, but I also believe in, the paranormal and deities and like the occult and like manipulating energy to achieve the outcome that I want, which is magic. Like that's how I would define it, right?
And me personally, I don't
So
think that there's a disconnect between science and that. Like, it might be, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
that's a whole
Yeah,
other.
I know. I agree with you too. I agree with that too. It's like alchemy was before chemistry, and like alchemy kind of like transitioned over into chemistry, but it used to be pretty commonplace for like people to believe that you could take, different kind of elements and use those to achieve the outcome that you desired. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
I
it's
mean,
not a
there's people
it's not
that
a
think,
new age concept. Sorry.
I mean, there's people that think the earth is flat. So let me have
Yeah.
magic. Because I mean, people like,
Right.
I think that. So, but I think like, when you start talking about things that you can't explain, some of it is like, really out there, and others is like, well, is it that, outside of the realm
Yeah.
of what we're
Yeah,
on track to
exactly.
like find out about? Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, so
So I approached Shiva because I was like, I messaged her on Instagram, and I was like, I'm like this, I'm really drawn to like the values and the seven tenets really speak to me of the Satanic Temple. I love the work that's being done, the humanitarianism work. Love it. But here's the thing, I also identify as a witch, and I, practice magic, right? And she was very, very, very kind, and took her time out to really speak with me, which is cool because like somebody like that's she's a very busy person, right?
yeah,
And so she took the time to answer me and basically said that she felt like there was room for different kinds of Satanists within the Satanic Temple, and she felt like it was becoming more open-minded. But her book, her approach is a little different. Like I have seen her use like hashtags like magic. Of course, when I say magic, I mean with a C, not with a K.
uh-huh.
I have seen her use that kind of hashtags before. That can be like interpreted as different ways, but the way that she created this book, The Devil's Tomb, and it's all about rituals, and she actually creates and hosts a lot of the rituals that the Satanic Temple have. The unbaptism and the black mass and stuff like that are all like kind of rituals that she'll host at different times. And basically it's a book of spells for the non-theistic witch, which I think is really needed. She is an atheist. She does not work with deities. She's, of course, the book is called The Devil's Tomb, and she is taking it from that non-theistic approach of it representing something.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's, there's a lack of representation for the left-hand paths and all the manifestations underneath the left-hand path. And I think that that's no different for non-theistic witches and non-theistic Satanists, and non-theistic Satanists that also identify as witches,
Right, of course.
So I really appreciate her work for that. So I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, a witch is not tied to anything but themselves. So you can be a witch, you can do spells, but yeah, you're right. Like when you say that, like, I mean, I don't know. I think it's more, it's different now, but I remember starting out and you did like, well, let me see what this spell is. It's like almost every, and I don't know, God, it fucking sounds ridiculous, but 10 years ago, I promise you, 10 years ago, a little bit over 10 years ago, it was still hard to, I mean, it was there, it was just buried. Like your first thing is, well, you have to call on this deity for prosperity. You have to call on this deity to help with this. It's like, okay, well, they can help. I'm sure they will. They've got correspondences and relations to that. But like, that's not, and then when you start practicing, it's like, that's not spell work. I guess it is, but I'm not here to worry about correspondences on that level. Like, I want to do the prosperity. So what do I do? And what do I want to do?
Exactly. And I think that's kind of it's kind of a shitty way to approach a deity too. Like, oh, so I heard you're the deity that fucks with money. You know what I mean? I've never worked with you before. I've never had a conversation with you before, but I'm kind of broke. So you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Can I hold $20? That's what it's like. And I think the modern day witchcraft is kind of going away from that idea. And it certainly has a place because there's certain spells that you would work with certain deities, and you certainly could. But why work with, and that's something I've always pushed, why work with something that you've never worked with before when you already have things that you interact with daily that could help you, like spirits and familiars and demons. Like, go find you a demon that's not doing anything, get it some flowers, and be like, I need you to find me some money. And don't go for the ones that are like gonna like like you lost everything, but here's your insurance payout. Like, don't go for those.
And be very specific.
Yes. But I think we're coming up on an hour now, or 2 hours.
We are. Yeah, we are. That flew by.
And it doesn't even feel like it, but there's so much to talk about. So like every episode that I do or have a guest on, I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface, but it is what it is. But I'll have to have you on again and we can get into more. And I hopefully that people that listen to this, because I'll let you know when it comes out and you can share it. And we want questions because we want to, you get them all the time, but no, because like I would love to have you on again and get into more depth of some of the things maybe we skimmed over. But
yeah, I would love that. I would love that.
Or you work with it, or you have recommendations or things like that. Like, send them our way and we can like put together something else. But I mean, it's been great having you on. I know.
Thank you so much.
It's been a minute that we've talked about
yes.
coming on and stuff. So, and I was like, I mean, I want to talk about this, and this is the person I want to come on because like she's opinionated. She knows things like.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm honored to be invited, and thank you so much.
Well, we'll have you on in the future, and hail Satan, hail yourself,
hail Satan, hail yourself, and hail Hecate,
and hail demons or something,
and hail Lilith.
Hail Lilith. Yeah, yeah, if you want to slut shame Lilith, have fun with that. I'm sure it'll go well. But
yeah, but she did mother a bunch of demons, so I would watch my back on that.
All right, well, thank you again, and
okay.
Until next time, goodbye.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.